Welcome everyone to Track E, the international track. I'm Carl Gerber, Chief Data Officer for Deloitte US, and I'll be your track producer. MIT's CDOIQ Symposium continues to expand our global reach. We have an excellent lineup of sessions that bring a world view. This is session 4E, Banorte's Data Transformation Journey, how data science has yielded massive ROI. There are high expectations about data initiatives across different industries. However, too often results are disappointing and produce a backlash against transformational efforts. This talk will delve into Banorte's journey into a data-enhanced organization with data science projects delivering net revenues of $4 billion US during the past 6 years. There will be a discussion on how to design a data science team to deliver extraordinary ROI and how those results are measured and what type of initiatives create more value. This session is being recorded. Replays and session materials for all the sessions will be made available after the symposium. We do have a Q&A, so please enter your Q&A into the Whova application in the Q&A tab and vote up others, and we'll address the Q&A as they come in, and so we'll do it throughout the presentation. Now I would like to introduce Jose Murillo, Chief Analytics Officer, Grupo Financiero Banorte. Jose established and leads the analytics business unit at Banorte, the second largest financial group in Mexico. His group has been recognized as a success story within the data and analytics industry. The value created with analytics in 2020, the 6th year of operations of his group, was equivalent to $1 billion US. During his tenure, the value created exceeds $4 billion US. This case was published at Harvard Business Review as an example of a company which made its analytics investments pay off in 2018, and by Forbes in 2020 as an example of a firm that has developed high ROI artificial intelligence applications. In addition, the Harvard Business School has written and taught a case study on Jose's analytics and digital transformation leadership. He obtained the Lafferty Global Award on Credit Card Excellence for the impact of analytics on customer equity in 2016, and also has been recognized for developing highly commendable AI solutions by the Global Aonics Awards in 2020. Jose has been named repeatedly among the top global analytics and data professionals by Corinium. He has been published in several industry and refereed journals. He is an international speaker at data science and artificial intelligence forums, and he is a member of Queen's University Advisory Board for the Masters in Management Analytics. Prior to Banorte, Jose was a top-ranking official at Mexico's central bank and participated for more than a decade at the Monetary Policy Committee, holding the staff's view on inflation, the key variable for policy decisions. Also, he was an advisor to the International Monetary Fund and led missions to several Latin American countries. At the academia, he taught economics at Rice University, ITAM, and El Colegio de Mexico. He holds a PhD in economics from Rice University and a BA from ITAM, cum laude, and national prize winner for the National Chamber of Commerce and Telecalel. Jose, it's all yours.
Thank you, Carl, and hello to everyone. I'm delighted to be here with you today. Hola from Mexico to everyone. I'm delighted to tell you our journey to become a data-enhanced organization during the past 6 years. The journey that I'm going to tell you about relates the financial group's transformational effort, and with the group, I myself transformed into a data science during that time. As Carl said, in my previous life, I was a central banker, and I had the good fortune to reinvent myself as a data scientist 6 years ago, when there was a chance to establish a data science team at Banorte, then the fourth largest financial group in Mexico. And at the time, it was the financial group was facing significant challenges, since it was facing a declining return on equity. It was lagging international competitors such as Santander and Citibank. And as you might imagine, there were many initiatives that at the moment to try to reach an inflection point and recover the vigor which Banorte had in previous years. If we fast forward the time since we started in 2015, the data science team, which I lead, has yielded more than $4 billion in net revenue linked to data science projects. Last year, as Carl said, we made $1 billion in net revenue linked to those initiatives. Banorte has leapfrogged its international competitors to become the second largest financial group in Mexico, the most profitable pre-pandemia, and post-pandemia, we are the best capitalized and among and I think we are the second most profitable, but with I guess after the pandemia, we proved to be resilient, not even better than resilient. We were perhaps anti-fragile in the sense that we returned stronger, and I will get back to that a little bit later. So when I was invited to speak at the prestigious MIT CDOIQ forum, I thought, what can I really share about this almost 6 years journey of our transformational efforts? And I found that there were probably 10 things that I find important in that journey that to share, and that could be of potentially useful to the audience. And the first thing is that we were designed to yield high returns on investment. And why is that? Because we were designed as a profit center, as opposed to many data science groups that are established as cost centers. So what I mean by being a profit center, that means that we had one thing in mind, is that we didn't only wanted to make the company smarter, but also that intelligence translated into wealth. Wealth for whom? For our customers, stockholders, and employees of the corporation. And in that sense, that's something that it's quite different from most of the analytics and data science teams to be built into that way. That also has helped us focus in our projects to uncover value, to make the company more profitable using data. And I think there are a couple of things that are interesting in the way that we were designed, aside of being a profit center. One of those is that the way that incentives were designed were to be compatible with cooperation, in the sense that if our business colleagues were successful, we would be successful. And if otherwise, if they were not successful, we wouldn't be successful. And in some sense, we were sharing the luck of the business. And so, that made us part of the team, not a mere observer or a coach. We felt that as we were playing in the field together with the business, the different businesses of the bank. Another thing that it's that hasn't been, I guess, yet settled is to whom will this type of business unit report? In our case, we report to the Chief Operating Officer / Chief Financial Officer. So that has helped the group to be sponsored by the corporation and to have the necessary autonomy to pick the projects that have the potential to yield massive returns on investment. And finally, the people. We built a team with the best professionals you can find in Mexico. And what do you mean by best professionals? It's not only that they are good on the quantitative side, that's really important, that they know their math, but also that they had the ability to communicate complex ideas to our business colleagues, and also that they have the ability to build consensus upon those ideas to be able to implement. Because at the end of the day, we were a profit center. So it's not only about generating ideas, but to have those ideas implemented. So at the end of the day, the people in the team have a large dosage of intrapreneurship, in the sense that ideas need to get done.
Jose,
so that's, yes, sure.
Yes, there's a question here that I think is relevant. As you're describing your team, the audience wants to know distributed or centralized. So distributed out into the different business units or centralized in the center.
That's a great question. And I think that there are multiple ways to, or different experiences. In our case, it's centralized. It's in some sense a center of excellence that has, but I will get back to that point a little bit later, because although the team is centralized, we work very closely with our business colleagues and co-create most of our projects together with the different people in business. And a point that I will get back to later is that we have gone at a faster pace once we decided to improve data literacy across all corporation. And I'll get back to that in a second. And thank you for the question, Carl. And any question is welcome. And Carl and I will try to address them when they'll come, if they are related to what we're talking about. So the second thing is that, the first element is the way that we were designed. And we were designed to yield a return on investment. Let me tell you one thing on that point that is that high expectations were set from the beginning, because on the first year we were asked to yield 10 times our cost, which is more than 3 times to what it's asked for a traditional business that it's being funded. On the first year, we yielded 46 times our cost, and last year we were above 250 times our cost with an increasing base. So having the right design, I think it was crucial. The second element that I would like to share with everyone is, and I think there was a question from Srinivasan a little bit, Sankar a little bit earlier, on the chat, about if the $4 billion we're talking about were tangible or intangible. And part of I guess of what keep us honest and make us focus on what it's yielding is to have agreed a common yardstick on how we were going to measure impact. And there are basically 3 types of things that we're doing. Our initiatives that are related to reducing costs, and that might be risks, operational or financial, or initiatives. The second track might be initiatives that are revenue enhancing strategies or initiatives. And third would be kind of like consulting. And the way that we agreed on how we would be measuring those three types of projects or that classification is those things that are related to reducing costs would be measured by the contemporaneous effect on the calendar year. And so in some sense, a lot of these projects have a recurring effect on reducing costs. And so during the time that they are reducing costs until there's a new technology that probably replaces that, we are accounting for the effect that they have on that year. That's probably estimating how much costs you abated. It's not that difficult. That's something that it's validated by the accounting department at the financial group. And that can come, as I said, from either reducing the cost of risk. And in banking, you can see that very clearly when you reduce, for example, reserve requirements, or and that's kind of like very direct effect. Or when you are reducing operational risks, that also is very, very direct. And then you have financial and reducing financial costs, and that's usually can also be measured very directly. So that's usually not a problem for data scientists on how to measure. But when you're talking about revenue enhancing exercises, and especially in banking, when you probably are increasing the number of products a customer has. So there are several questions. Are the new products going to make the customer stay for longer? Are they going to use those products? Are there the population that you're selling those products, are they riskier or less risky than other customers? And the way that we agreed on how we were going to measure those contributions is through the customer lifetime value. And that in some sense, it's a little bit more complicated, because not everyone is measuring the customer lifetime value, which is equivalent to the net present value of the customer, of the business relationship that you have with a customer. And even if once you've developed that methodology, you are not really sure on what are the coefficients for some of the products that you're selling. Imagine that I'm one of the projects that we undertook was to enhance cross-selling efforts for credit cards, and there are many questions that you might find there. What's going to be the activation rate? What's going to be the spend? Are they going to be revolving? Are they riskier or less risky? And the way that we approach that problem is to use as an estimate that proved to be very, very conservative estimates, the known coefficients. And each year, as time passed, we would be refining those coefficients. And we found that when we were using data to pick the customers you wanted to deepen and extend the business relationship, you were getting much better customers. And in some sense, when I talk about that we've created $4 billion, that's in some sense a floor of what has been created, since a lot of these coefficients proved through time that they were probably more profitable than we thought initially. In some sense, we could revise our former results, but when you're in business, you know that doesn't make a lot of sense. You know, the bonuses are already paid, and that'd be kind of like wasting resources in some sense. So we measure revenue enhancing projects through the customer lifetime value. And then the third stream of projects that has to be with internal consultancy. Once you have a data science team, there are many questions that the corporation needs to be answered. And in some sense, it's a good way to uncover new ideas and to enhance the way that decisions are made in the company. But you have to, when you're a profit center, you're not a think tank, you need to balance those, the need to have a further understanding the business and to make better decisions, and your own contribution to the bottom line. And in that sense, that's the way that that helps us understand how much resources we're devoting to internal consultancies, that we measure the hours that we devote to each of those projects, that they might end up being very relevant, but it helps you understand how much effort you're focusing on discovering new projects, new ideas, or resolve questions that need to be resolved in the company, and the time that you're devoting to creating wealth. And so that's, at the end of the day, we measure and measure. We are measuring before we undertake a project. We try to understand how likely it's that it's going to be implemented, and then we are measuring what's the outcome of the short-term outcome of the project, and then we measure that a little bit time later and see if there are further opportunities to work on that project. So that's the second thing, is agreeing on a common yardstick. The third element that I think I found that it's useful in our case was when we started our data science team, we were kind of like newcomers, and it's not like the Banorte didn't have experience with data science. It's simply that they were not really that fruitful, and you need to gain credibility, because your business colleagues have also their own set of priorities, and they have their own ideas on what they want to push forward, and I guess working together on either on the ideas of your business colleagues that need data science, or your own data science conceived projects will require time from lots of stakeholders, and having people willing to work on those projects, it's crucial. And I guess that's the basis of capitalism, having people working on ideas that you think that are worthy. And the way that we solve that problem, since you're a newcomer in a very large corporation, that they have their own agenda, is that it's trying to pick a very good project to start with. And our very first project that we undertook was a cost evading project on risk, and it seemed like a sure bet, and there was a lot of detractors on you're going to disrupt things, and I'll get back to that a little bit later. But the nice thing of cost cutting projects is that it's evident to the corporation. You don't have to wait 3 or 5 years to see if the credit card perform and they were low risk and how much did they spend the customer. It's something that you can see immediately, and that's the beauty of cost cutting projects. That gave us a lot of credibility to work with the credit card business, which became a champion with us for data science projects and for more medium-term projects, medium-term maturing projects that would be would take a little bit more of time to get them implemented. And I guess in the end, what I can tell you is that on our first year of operations, cost-cutting projects amounted to about 50% of the net revenue that we created, and last year they amount to less than 10%. There's a limit on how much cost you can cut, evidently, and revenue-enhancing projects have a large promise. But as I said, even to measure the contribution of revenue-generating projects, it's a bit more complicated than cost-cutting projects. And the way that picking a high-probability project, which basically took into account 3 elements: the duration of the project, how much it would yield Ideally, you want something that it's going to be massive, that it's going to take a short amount of time, and that it's very likely to be implemented. That's something that we took into account. And by gaining credibility, then other business verticals followed into our work, and nowadays we're working with almost all the business verticals within the financial group, and even with some of the key staff areas such as human resources or fraud or other groups. I guess you were going to say something, Carl.
Yes, there's some questions that really dovetail nicely into your building credibility. There's a couple of questions that have come in from others who are at the beginning of their journey and are wondering how you got things started. You talked about picking the right project with a short duration and a high yield, but I think there's more to the story, and some of our audience wants to hear how you got going before you actually had an ROI. So, you know, that there's always that first time. So what were some of the business cases you were using or use cases in addition to this cost cutting one? You know, some advice for starting up, because your building credibility story is right on.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And let me give credit to whom it's due. And initially we had a large sponsor, you know, a very important sponsorship from the top. There was support from the top, but that can fade away quickly. And I guess when data science, at the end of the day, it's a business of disruption, and you're going to rattle things up and shake up things. And a lot of people are not going necessarily to like when you tell them that that they could do things differently from the way they've done it from the past 20 years. So that support, and also let me share at least my experience, and I think that might be more common in I guess if you were in Disneyland, you would have unique support backing the data science initiatives, but that's not necessarily the case. You know, people think differently, and probably they don't know if even if you're the right team or the right person to lead that effort. So in our case, to complicate things a little bit further, probably the reason why we had such a steep target for our first year was because there was not necessarily a unique vision on the way to move forward. There was probably a more side of the financial group that thought that it was much that it made sense to become a data enhanced organization and to move to what now we would deem in this symposium to be the modern way of doing business. But there was the other camp, the camp that worked for 130 years in the bank and that made Banorte climb from the 18th position to the 4th position. And you know, that's something that you need to recognize, the business acumen that comes from your business colleagues. So I guess in a nutshell, what I will say is I had the advantage of having support from the top. And I had the advantage of finding, and that's some of those things are probably luck, finding a group, in this case, the credit card business, that was open to prove or to experiment new things. And I guess there's another part that has to do with being having the right people in the team. And what I can tell you is that initially we were a small group of very highly trained people, but few of us had business experience. So if I could do things have been quite successful. We yielded more than $4 billion, and you know, it's been great, and it's a great story. As Carl said, it's on Harvard Business Review and Forbes and the MIT SMR. But if I could do things differently, there are two things that I would have done differently. I would have a more, you tend to think that people that are very similar to you are probably the best picks. And I think diversity is very important in having a strong team with different views. And that's something that the team has evolved through time. And I not only refer to gender and race in education, but also on different venues of professional experience. And the second thing that I would think I would make a large investment is on data literacy across the company. And I'll come a little bit later to that, but I think that's crucial. So let me move to the fourth lesson that I think it's relevant to, or that I found relevant in my journey, and ties well to what I've been saying. And it's the data science business at its core. It's very disruptive, and you want to change the way things have been done for several years, to break with inertia. And it shouldn't be that surprising that there's going to be a natural resistance to what you're doing. And sometimes it's because multiple reasons why there's that resistance, but the simplest might be, why should we do something differently? You know, we've been in business for 130 years, and I guess the most important thing that I have to say about this disruptive process and the natural resistance that you might be finding is that at the end, I think that data scientists, what separates a data scientist in business from academics, for example, is that you must be an intrapreneur. It's not only of having novel ideas or you know, building shiny objects. It's about implementing them. And that needs a large dose of intrapreneurship on one side, and on the other side, it's a highly political position, that of the CDAOs, the chief data or analytics officer, are people that need to build consensus around ideas that are probably complex and not familiar to the rest of the company. If they were familiar, you know, they wouldn't need such a role. So it's the disruption creates resistance, and that requires the fortitude of entrepreneurs to be able to carry forward those projects. The fifth thing that I found that I think it's very important now, one of the topics I'm very interested on, it's the use, at the end of the day, what you're doing, it's using the scientific method. And while I said at the beginning that it was very important to pick the right projects, and if you could if it was possible to have a sure bet to go for it, since you need to build credibility, that's certainly not the way that you're going to build an exponential impact in your organization just by playing it safe. What you need to do is to have a portfolio of bets that are reasonable, that are tested on small populations, that if they don't work, nothing will happen. But that if they work, you will be able to scale them up fast. And that's something that we've been doing for some years. And it's to have a large experimentation program upon which we are running about 2 or 3 interventions per week with different experiments, or 2 or 3 experiments with different interventions each, multiple interventions in each one. And that's what it really has helped us understand much better our customers, to serve them much better. And with the boost that we had in digital users, the learning cycles are becoming shorter. And and I guess I'm going back to the theme of resistance, that when you're trying to build these experiments, you will find some natural resistance because everyone thinks that they have their best idea. And why should I keep a control group and a treatment group? And why don't do it for everyone? And that's, there are concerns that need to be addressed when you want to experiment. Our first experiments took lots of time to get them done. They were shrinked on the expectations that we had, and it took us a long time to measure. Now we have set up a framework in which we can implement in less than 48 hours an idea. We can deploy that idea very fast. It helps that the CRM reports to the data science business unit, to the analytics business unit. But we deploy very fast. We measure very quickly. We share those knowledge to everyone, and we use causal machine learning algorithms to find the right populations to expand the things that work very, very quickly. And that takes me to I guess the key of using the scientific method and embracing a culture of experimentation. At the end of the day, you want to understand causality. If the interventions that you're conducting are having the effect that you think that they are having, and that's I guess the main point that I want to say on this theme. The sixth thing that I think it's relevant to share with you, it's that, yes, you're going to experiment, and you can have those experiments that are probably have less or more content, but that are driven by experience or questions that you might have. But you really want to explore things that are going to change the nature of the relationship with the customer so that you can cement a longer relationship with the customer to really deepen that relationship. And that might that might mean doing things that are probably more complex than just shifting a photograph on the internet side of the company, or putting the banner in blue or red. And the sixth thing that I want to share with you is that if you really want to understand much better your customers, you need to rely on a wide arc of knowledge, that it's not probably limited to your own business experience or your own discipline of study. So I'm an economist, and I used to be a central banker, and that wouldn't help much to become a commercial banker. And if you want to, that my experience as an economist, that probably help a little bit more, but that's probably too limited. And so data scientists need to be constantly learning about many other disciplines so that they can fuel their own experimentation programs and try and see what works. In my case, I can tell you, it's not only knowing about the hard stuff about data or artificial intelligence, machine learning, yeah, that's given. But you also need to know more about how we think as humans, and then you need to rely more on disciplines such as anthropology, social psychology, behavioral economics, very much like the MIT's Human Dynamics lab, that it relies on this wide arc of knowledge. And the best example that I can tell you of one of the interesting things that we've done, it's after I had a lunch with a top-notch behavioral economist, Dan Ariely, he pointed out to me about the importance of reciprocity. And one day, one of my marketing colleagues told me, well, we have such such gifts are going to expire in a couple of weeks. What should we do with them? And I thought, well, we are going to give them away and without any conditions, and then we are going to see if that helps us change the dynamics of the relationship with the customer. And I'm not going to go in detail with that experiment since we don't have much time. But the way of changing a relationship from a transactional nature to a reciprocal nature multiplied by a fivefold the results that we were getting on the specific exercise that we were doing. And then we later repeated and saw that the results were robust, independent of age, gender, wealth, situation. And that's kind of like a very different way in which you think that you're relating with your customers. And one it's on a transactional nature, and another is in a reciprocal nature. And when you go for a reciprocal way of doing things, and that's very much the way the DNA of the Homo sapiens is built, is that we are reciprocal beings. And that really expands the frontiers of what you can do with a customer. And I guess that leads me to the seventh theme that I think it's been relevant in my journey. And it's the importance of academic partnerships. We are in the era of knowledge, and too often it seems that people get out of college or their master's or PhD program, and they would think that they don't need to learn more, and that's or they get far from what it's the cutting edge of research. And I find that's why we have such a big lag between academic discoveries and implementation by industry. And it's that it's taking us too long to absorb that knowledge. And the best way to be sure that what you're learning and what you're doing is it's really what you learned, and that you're using the best tools that you can use, is that keep close to the sources of knowledge. In our case, we have already a several years long partnership with Duke University's Center for Advanced Hindsight Lab that's ran by Dana Rielli. We have partnerships with professors from Harvard Business School, Carnegie Mellon, Chicago University, the economics department, Carnegie Mellon on artificial intelligence. We have are working with the University of California, San Diego, their students from the Master in Analytics program. And we've worked with the MIT, the Humans Dynamic Lab on research projects. We had professors that took their sabbatical year at our data science team and yielded research that has already been published by the National Bureau of Economic Research and commented by Nobel Prize winners. And that has helped us to also be sure that we are really implementing our methods in a robust and serious way, so that we know that again, that what we are learning is true learning, and that there are no probably holes on what we are doing. So that's 7 things that so far that I think that have been relevant in my own journey. I will add 3 things more. The 8th one is and I was pointing out that it's the relevance of data literacy. And that's something that I discovered very recently when the pandemic started. One of my business colleagues who leads the digital business and credit card business, and he said, hey, we're working from away from the office. What about if you set up a workshop so that the people in my team know much better about data literacy and that, are much understand much better what you're doing. And that truly was a blessing. And we did our first workshop with about 70 top leaders from the financial group, and they set up their own projects, and that really advanced very well. And that started to change the way people even communicated, and they incorporated the in their decision making that the relevance of why they needed to have control groups for their interventions, and even the language started to change. The last workshop that we conducted, we partnered with the Duke University and had more than 250 business colleagues. There were 20 data science projects were yielded from the attendance. The best ones were shown to the executive committee, and they are getting tracked. So it's, again, going to the question if it's centralized or decentralized. Probably at the beginning was very centralized, and now it's becoming much more decentralized as we have evolved at the end of the day. And now I understand that data literacy is very important to have to move at a faster pace. The ninth thing that I might share with you is that on using artificial intelligence, there is need to be a basis of natural intelligence on the problem that you are trying to solve. Because artificial intelligence is not going to substitute for natural stupidity, as the saying goes. And what I found that it's very interesting on using artificial intelligence is that it really helps you move at a faster pace and accelerates the learning curve on things that might take you longer. And I have seen that from when we implemented speech-to-text algos to understand much better the scripts that we were using to sell something to the customer. But and yes, it helps you to go to at a scale and understand lots of hundreds of thousands of conversations. But the first 5 conversations that you listen to are going to give you a lot of power. So the same thing happens when we are running these experiments that I was talking to you about, in which we find something that is successful and then we try to expand it. And if we didn't use our causal machine learning algorithms, it will take us a long time to converge. And something that as a data scientist, you have to keep in mind is that time matters. It's the velocity upon which you carry out the project is very relevant, and you can support can fade if you take too long, or people might just get satisfied with the first results that you get, and often it's through those iterations that you really get the amazing results. Finally, to leave some time for questions, if there are any of those, it's I guess what has worked for us in the experiment, in the realm of experimentation, and again through partnership with one of the professors from Texas A&M who spent some time at Banorte. It helped us not only to conduct great experiments, but to do a meta-analysis on the different experiments that we are conducting. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of, you're facing scarce resources, and you want to take your best shots. And the way to do it is, yes, it helps you if you're relying on this wide arc of knowledge. There are lots of experiments that have been conducted in academia that can give you an idea. But what is going to work better for you? It's more specific to your company, to your country, and so we've after running the first 500 experiments with multiple interventions each, we conducted a meta-analysis on what worked best for us, what was yielding the highest return on investment. If we had scarce resources, what we should focus on. And there's the most important thing that we found is that you need to focus on lifting or imposing barriers in the interaction with the customer. And that's the thing that gives you the most impact. And let me be very, very specific. If you are trying, suppose, to make your customer save more for tomorrow, and you can tell them to do it directly in a way, or that you're going to set up an interview with an executive. Well, if you do that, the second one, which seems, well, that's going to be a great service, yes, but that's just setting up a barrier in the interaction with the customer. Or if you are displaying on that's relevant on the channels that you're using, and how direct you're on the way that you're framing the offers that you're making. So the most important thing is lifting or imposing barriers. Or should you put a pop-up message in when the customer gets into the mobile? And that might be very relevant if you want to send a message to the customer. And yes, you need to understand if that has an impact on customer satisfaction and you have and conversion rates. But then you have your KPIs, and you have, for that reason, you have treatment and control groups upon which you are going to test what's the different reaction to what the interventions that you're doing. So the most important thing that we found is lifting or imposing barriers in customer interaction. The second thing that it's the most important is to set the right price. And everyone who has taken a course in economics, principles economics course knows that we should care about not only about the price, but also about the quantity. Too often, but too often firms don't really know what's going to be the price elasticity, and they are afraid of reducing prices without really knowing what's going to be the effect on the quantity that it's being demanded. And for us, it has been really relevant on setting the right price for different products, and too often that has meant cutting prices and signaling the price reduction appropriately to the customers. And there are many more things that we have learned and relevant experiments that have a large impact. But I think we have about 5 minutes, Carl. I don't know if there are any more questions or.
Yes, just trying to come off of mute here. There's a question that goes very nicely with your last point about how you partnered with the business around that common view of how do we benefit the customer, lifting the barriers or imposing the barriers, as well as the price elasticity. So the question is, how do you ensure that your team is focused on the business priorities and that your business, you're able to shape that demand with the business, so you really have that tight alignment? And I think you gave us some insights into that, but what would you add to it? How you make sure that you're really focused on doing the right things?
That's a fantastic question. I can, and as you say, I talked about incentives and having the right incentives, but at the end of the day, what is very relevant is that we have frequent meetings with our business colleagues. And that means that we are meeting once a week and we review the projects and we co-create the different projects. And at the end, there's a process upon which we understand the priorities also of the business, which are our own. We want them to be successful and to have if they're successful, we're going to be fine, and otherwise, and I guess to the point on lifting, for example, barriers or imposing barriers, what you need is to really have a deep knowledge of the processes, and the people who know the processes are the business leaders and so it's so this is more like I guess if you really want to be effective and have the highest impact, it's you need to talk a lot with with the people on the business side.
Yes, it's very clear that you've established that relationship. One of the key things you mentioned early in your 10 points. There's one last question that came through that we could round out on, and that is, as you think about the data and analytics team that you have assembled, the question is about balancing the data science functionality and skills with the data management, and then interjecting data governance as well. I think we have a lot of our audience are, again, at the beginning of their journey and would like to see, you're showing what it looks like when you've been successful, but how did you get there in terms of balancing across those three functions?
There's an amazing thing that happened also, and I should have acknowledged earlier, and is that the business really needs three key elements when you're in this type of business. You need the data, the brain, the technology, and the brains. And the data, I've been very lucky that there's a chief data officer, David Delgado, who is one of my partners, whom he's in charge of having that single source of truth and having the right data, and he's awesome. And so the way that we divide and conquer is that he's focused on the data, and I'm focused on the business opportunities, and we have a very good working relationship with the IT and innovation departments, upon which we kind of like talk again often about what are the priorities and what do we need, where do investments need to be taken care of. And so once we have this data technology and brains, and within the data science team, there's also one thing that I would like just to repeat. It's that we have the group that has are doing the modeling, experimentation, all the data science, more, if you want to say, traditional work. And then there's the CRM, which reports to the data science team. And that really helps a lot, because the time from the ideation to implementation is very short. And a lot of the business management that you were talking about, it's also conducted by the CRM.
Okay. Jose, this has just been a fantastic journey to hear how you've gone through your 10 key points and focus areas, and you've built these just outstanding business results, and how you remain very close with your business and a single focus around the customer. Is there anything else you would like to say in closing as we round out this session?
I guess the most important thing from all these 10 things, that if there's a key message that I want to say, is that the profit center was very relevant. But I guess for everyone, for any business or for any professional life, knowing what's your contribution to the bottom line, helps you focus on what's important. And I guess if you don't really know what value are you creating, how much are you worth, nobody's going to pay you what you're worth.
I think that is an incredible close. Again, thank you for spending this time together and sharing your journey with all of our audience. For the audience, this and all the other sessions have been recorded and will be made available to you after the show. This concludes our session.